Welcome to the Triskele podcast.
We are three druids gathered in a virtual grove
to share our thoughts and our path with you.
Hi, I'm Drum. My personal pronouns are he and his.
Hi, I'm Victoria. I use she and her.
And I'm Amber. I also use she and her.
Cool. So this is the second episode of the Triskele podcast. We are really, really glad to be back with everyone. We got some really good feedback from our first episode, and Amber has hopefully fixed her mic issues.
Woohoo!
So, seems to have fixed her mic issues. We'll find out on the recording. But welcome. Welcome back if this is the second time you're watching us, and welcome to the podcast if you have just found us. How was your week, everybody?
Long. It was a very long week. Somehow it's one of those weeks that every day felt like it should already be Friday. So I'm just glad we're actually Friday and recording.
Me too. I had a long week too, but this is a nice way to come into Friday.
It is. It is nice to come and hang out with friends and just kind of chill after a very, very long week of Mondays. It was Monday every day, and it was not fun.
Yeah.
But this week we are going to be talking about our daily practice, which is something that helps at least me survive through long weeks like the week we've had. And so I guess let's start with, what does your daily practice look like? Amber, why don't you start?
For me, honestly, it changes constantly. I'm a working mom. I've got 2 little kids. And so sometimes just trying to find the time to do anything can be a challenge. So I really try to focus on things that I'm already doing and building practice into those. So I make coffee every morning. So I say a small prayer that goes with my coffee because it's something I'm already doing. It's not going to take additional time for me. But more of my stuff it happens on a weekly basis than a daily basis. So I do tea with my ancestors on Sunday mornings. And this year I've started growing my own tomatoes. And so connecting with the nature spirits and Demeter through that act has been really important to me through the last 6 months, essentially since before COVID started. So I try to incorporate it into things that I want to do anyway, because it's a lot easier to maintain for me at that point than just one more thing I have to do during the day.
Cool. Drum?
I do have a couple of things I do for daily practice. One of them is it's something I do every morning. Wash my hands first, because I think it's good to enter into a devotional practice clean. And so I have an altar set up to what I call Lares, my household spirits. And I wash my hands, and I have a little cup of water, and I have a stone, a Huasi stone. We can talk about that sometime. Huasi stone, and what I do is I take water from the bowl and I anoint the stone every morning, and I dip my water in the fingers in the water 3 times, and I say, "I welcome to you, my Lares. I welcome you to another day of friendship and peace. Thank you for watching over my home, my hearth, and my family." And that's the quickie first thing in the morning devotional that I do. And I do another longer devotional a little later than that, but that's like first thing devotional that I do. And there are weekly practices that I do for just general things, but that's how I start the day. I think it's really important.
Yeah, for me, my day starts usually after breakfast, and it is sort of the okay, now my day officially starts, and I light a candle. I welcome in the kindreds and the allies of my hearth, and ask them for just healing. I have a list of folks for healing. And ask them for healing for people on that list, and just thank them for the blessings that they have shared with us as we survive in this crazy, crazy time now. And then I pull some sort of divination. I'm currently working my way through Omen to try to learn those better. And but sometimes it's runes or sometimes it's tarot, depending on what I'm working on at that time. And then weekly, so I'm a journaler. I track every, like bullet journaling kind of journaling, and so every week I sit down and I really have some time where I focus and I go through my week that happened and the week that's coming up, and do a bit of, it's not really a hardcore spiritual practice, I guess, but it's a bit of introspection on, okay, let's think about the last week, let's think about the week ahead, and just kind of reset everything for the coming week.
That's interesting. I recently did some journaling for a project that I'm working on, and it was, I'm not typically a journaler, but I found it fascinating because I did a weekly devotional ritual for Demeter, and I journaled the information that I did in the working section of it, and also an omen that I took. And I had omens that I had taken outside of that practice, and the correspondences between those were so striking. And I could see over time that my work with Demeter was improving, but also that the omens were becoming more insightful and deeper, and really were kind of pointing a direction. There were some certain commonalities in it that really kind of drove a number of points home, like, hey, you can't miss this now that it's come up for the 5th week in a row. So I found that I really like that. I like that weekly working a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and what I've learned, sorry, V.
Go ahead.
For me, journaling gives, a lot of times when you're in that moment, you're right, you don't see the importance that something may play later on, or an omen, you may think you understand what it means, but you go back and look at it later and it hits you that completely differently, but it shows just how relevant it is. We actually ran into that earlier this week. I was adding subtitles to one of our ADF core rites, the one for Imbolg. And in it, our newest Reverend Julie did an omen, and she talks about major changes coming in the future and having to essentially stay home and protect yourself and do all these things. And in that moment, I actually stopped what I was doing and I sent it to Victoria and I sent it to Julie and I said, please watch this, because it essentially showed us exactly what was going to be happening in the next 3 months and we had no idea. So, I mean, the ability to take your journal and look back at those messages that are so easily forgotten can be really, really life-changing.
Yeah, I've recorded every OM that I've done, and I've been doing OM for probably the last 3 months or so since I moved here. And it's funny how the same ones keep coming up. Like there's a very definite pattern of, apparently I'm not hearing something, or I need to keep remembering something. I'm not sure which one it is, but there's a very, very definite pattern. And there's been a few times where I get the same omen 2 to 3 days in a row. And usually those are really rough days. And it's a reminder of, like, no, stay centered. We've got your back. Like, it's some one of those kinds of omens. But it's really interesting to see how it goes. And I went through and I'm a geek. I made a spreadsheet that tracks it all so I could see how many times each one of them showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And there are definite trends with what the different omen are showing up and saying. And so probably I might do it this weekend, or I might do it at the end of August, actually looking back over a few months worth and seeing how that trend has happened, has changed, has sort of flown as it goes. But I've also recently been sort of driven to add a tarot reading, an actual full spread, to my weekly sort of replanning, which could be really interesting to add that as well and see how that reflects in the Om that I'm drawing every day, and how that parallels. But sometimes it's really freaky.
Mm-hmm.
I did an article for Oak Leaves one time, the ADF Journal. It was about a grove in the UP of Michigan, and they used to always send out their poems for the Omen. And so what I did is they came into being, and then the grove dissolved at a certain point. And so I took all those omens and I made this like serpentine diagram, and I hashed all the ogham along the way with separators. And so it was kind of a graphical representation of their omens through time. And it was really kind of fascinating because in the very beginning there was all this optimism, and then at the very end, as things were kind of winding down, you could see that the omens were reflecting, what was carrying on. And then there was that graphic representation, which was kind of like just geekiness in a way. I was just like, ooh, all these hash marks, it's so cool. And but I thought that was a really interesting way of representing the kind of divinatory history of this grove.
Yeah. One of the things I've been doing in my weekly practice right now is every Monday I do either 3 card or 3 lot or whatever pull. And I'm sharing that with social media. And one of the things that I found really interesting is seeing other people connect to those messages, where there's times where I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is for me. This is, I understand what this is saying. And there's other times where I'm like, I got nothing. And I'll post it and other people are like, thank you. This is, this connects to me, and so it's a really interesting experience, I guess, to not anticipate someone else connecting with the message that you're getting.
It's true. But
please go.
Zoom is fun, slight lag, we talk over each other, and we normally talk over each other a fair amount. So
we're probably more polite here though than we are in real life.
We're a lot more polite here than we are in real life. No, I was just thinking that, so I follow a lot of various pagans on Instagram, and I know, Amber, you do too, and I'm not sure how much you actually Instagram or Facebook beyond what I've seen. But you see a lot of people that are sharing their daily practices and their weekly practices, and they always look so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I know that when I'm taking pictures of my altar for Instagram, it does get staged quite a bit.
Oh, for sure.
It's tidied up, just stuff gets shuffled around. No. If I put I have a green stone that I use as a representation of earth. So if I put that in a certain spot so that the camera hits it just right, and you fuss with it all the time. But have you felt any I know we talked to other people in ADF and in OBOD and in all the other different orgs that we're part of about their daily practices. How do you handle the fact that when somebody else is doing a really strict, maybe they're taking an hour in the morning to do a practice and they're doing it every day, that can feel daunting, because mine takes about 3 minutes.
I think there's a time and a place for that. I mean, not everyone in every situation has the time or ability or desire to have a practice like that. There's been times in my life where I have, and it can be really rewarding, but it can also be really exhausting. But I think when it comes to things like social media, it's really important to remember that those things are staged, that, you're only seeing one tiny square of that person's life, and you don't know how many of those pictures are stored, or, you don't know the backstory. You don't watch this video and realize that my mic right here is standing on a box that's on a box that's also on a box. It looks nice. That's all that matters, right?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, for the people who spend an hour doing that, I admire them, because I really don't have that much time. I know that my second stage morning devotional practice, because I've been running lately, it takes 8/10 of a mile. So I can't tell you how long it takes time-wise, but I can tell you distance-wise how long it takes. So mine is much briefer than people who have a lot of time to devote to it. I honor them for doing so. I really do. I'm, in awe of that. And, there are days where I spend more time, but usually it's less time than an hour.
But that's why I try to incorporate it in things I'm already doing. I've got certain workings that I'll do on my drive to work in the morning, which I haven't had to do in several months. So, that's a part of my practice that's missing. But it's those things that I'm already doing, essentially those blank spaces, things that I can do on autopilot that I can bring meaning into without losing time necessarily.
Yeah, that's true. I've actually incorporated my work with my house spirits, as my partner and I call them our roommates. Uh, with So I give them weekly offerings of bread, and I bake bread every week. So as the bread comes out of the oven and after it's cooled off, and we get ready to take, that first yummy bite of fresh made bread, uh, the usually the second piece, because the first actual slice of bread, that's not the heel, gets at least a portion of it gets cut off and offered, and that just sort of becomes part of, we're cutting into the bread. This is just a thing that happens, which is kind of nice that it's sort of on automatic, or at least it happens automatically. It's not really quite on automatic, but yeah, that sort of incorporating it into just stuff you're doing anyway and adding it to the routine.
For me, that's just been the easiest way to be consistent with it. It's not something that, oh, I forgot to do that. I'm not going to forget to drink coffee in the morning. It's not going to happen, you know? I mean, it's just a good way to start. And when you want to do extra things, if I've got a study program that I'm working on or a project that I want to work through or something, I'll add those, and those do become additional practices. But it's definitely something that I do with intent.
Yeah, my practices there's healing practices and other things that I do. And there are times where I expand those as needs arise. So I try to be a little more flexible with that. One of the things that I like to have, I'm fortunate that I have little altars and shrines set up all over the house. And in front of a lot of those, I have these little glasses of whiskey. And I call them incidental altars because they're incidental, but the whiskey is always there and it evaporates. So I feel that offering is always made. It's always kind of activated, even though I may not be standing in front of it at that time. So I think it's kind of passive devotional practices, but nonetheless, I think it's something that works. And once the offerings are consumed, then I refill them again.
I like that idea of the passive devotional practices. I know back when I commuted to work, I had a bit of a walk on both ends of my train commute. And also on the train, I would sit on the side that the sun was on, because the train also went past the lake. And so as I went past the lake, you'd see the sun on the lake. And I could say just a quick either thank you or just an acknowledgement of the lake and the ducks and the spirits and the herons and all the animals that were on the lake, to the nature spirits. Sort of this nice little thing in the middle of a otherwise very long commute. Or just walking by a tree and, petting the tree and being like, thank you, tree. Little things. Speaking of nature spirits.
Nature spirits, yes.
We thank you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, usually when I see during the times when I would drive to work, it would take me an hour and 15 minutes to get to work, 100 kilometers. And if I see the sun come up or the sun come down, I had this little thing I say, hey, Olu, red in the morning sky overhead, nothing escapes your view. I see your face at dawn. Or I would say, I see your face at dusk, and nothing escapes your view. And then at night, it would be nothing has escaped your view. It was just kind of an added bonus if I saw the sun come up, which was something that I really liked to see. It's a great anchor for the day.
It's
I did this one
early.
thing. Yeah, I did this one thing. Speaking of incidental altars, where I would draw 3 oghams if I had something in mind, and if there were trees in the vicinity, I would take the ogham and I would put them on a piece of paper, and I would wrap a string around the ogham, and I put them on the trees. These 3 trees that had space in between them. So I felt that as people walked between those trees, that they would kind of like activate those ogham. and they weren't anything harsh. They were just like good things. And, over time with rain or whatever, the papers would disintegrate and, the altars would go away. But, in that time, as people or animals or whatever would cross that kind of invisible barrier, I felt that the blessings that I had put forth would kind of be carried forward. So, it was just a way to kind of like a prayer flag that didn't move. It just sat on a tree. I do want to bring up a monthly practice that I engage in, and that's work at the full moon. There's a practice that a number of us do in ADF on the full moon for healing, and there's a little trope that I put together that we use, and it's I find it's a really good way to kind of mark the cycles of the moon. I do personally pay attention to the different quarters of the moon and the dark moon, because I think it's good to be aware that there's this really big body in the sky that does these different things every month. But I really like the idea of using the brightness and the light of the moon to kind of bring healing down. The idea is if you're working with those energies, that, if you want to call it that it's something that really flows to everybody who wants that or who's in need of it. So that's something that I do, and I think it's a very powerful practice for myself, and to honor the moon as well. So for healing and to honor the moon in its various stages.
Is that the video that's on the ADF YouTube channel?
It is.
Okay, we can link that down in the description thingy below.
Okay.
So that people can actually kind of see what it is you're doing.
Right. I did do something, I did come up with another little healing prayer recently. I think I may have sent it to you. It was a hymn to Baroma, I believe it was. And it is a Gaulish prayer that I wrote. So healing waters kind of thing. And I thought it was, or maybe I sent it to Victoria. I think I sent it to Victoria.
Did you send it to me?
I think I did, because you were looking for something as an alternative to what was already out there.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And so I didn't record anything. I just had the words, but it's a thought. One of our members came to me and said, "Oh, my wife was recently injured, and he follows the Gaulish path." And I said, "Well, here's a prayer for you."
The other thing that I really do monthly, I have two practices that I have still. Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, for those that may not know that. And she's always played a huge part in my personal path. So every month I kind of make a big deal about refreshing her space and making offerings and thanking her for protecting my family and our home and for making our safe, our space warm and bright and all the great things that hearth goddesses can do. So I try to do that at least every month, if not when things are feeling real cruddy. And then a couple years ago, I wrote a big, long trance process through the Odyssey. And so every month, I also kind of touch back with Athena and the work that I did through that and do kind of a check-in, reevaluate where I am, reconnect with Athena, which is fairly easy. That is who I consider my patron most of the time. But those are two essentially individual deities that I connect with every month, no matter what else I'm working on.
I like that.
That's pretty cool.
Your work with the Odyssey is amazing. Really amazing.
Sounded phenomenal.
Oh my goodness.
It's a little intense, but it was important for me, and I love mythology, and there was not many better ways I could think of to incorporate mythology into my own practice than to essentially build a working to walk through it myself.
Yeah, if there's ever a time in my life where I feel that the gods are a little more distant than they should be, I pick up the Odyssey and read it again, because it reminds me of how close they really are.
And how they can be in places where you don't see them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That is
you guys and the Greeks.
It's It's true. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to get away from, and it's the notion that some people that you meet, strangers that you meet, may be more than they seem to be. Uh,
Mhm.
Especially on a divinity level, they may be less than you expect. But
Yeah.
there are times when someone knocking at the door or someone that you come across is not just a chance encounter. There's something more behind it.
Yeah, but that's pretty common across all of the mythologies,
Oh, for sure.
right? I
Absolutely.
mean, there's always stories of the various gods going. I mean, there's the wanderer's form, right, of Odin, who. Oh, I'll have to go look up. Maybe one day we'll do a myth storytelling. We can take turns telling myths, our favorite myths from some of our favorite mythologies,
That'd be great.
which
I'd
will be
love
kind of
that.
fun.
That's why you ask me tomorrow. My practice might be different.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just sit and absorb it all because you guys have been doing this sort of more regular practice longer than I have. But yeah, there's definitely some ideas of things I can add and tweak and update. And that's one of the things that I find you were just referring to this, Amber. My practice changes. Like
Hmm.
it was completely different 3 months ago. 2 weeks ago, I changed up the prayer and changed up some of the pattern of how I do it. So we're constantly evolving as we go, as our experiences change, as the world changes, as our needs change, um, as I
And I think it's
learn
really
new
important to
things.
give yourself that freedom.
Yeah.
Let your practice change. Let it evolve as you change. Let it meet your needs. Don't stick to it has to be ABC every day.
Right. I've been fortunate in that there are people who reach out to me and say, "Hey, I did this today," and some people do that on a more regular basis. And I find that not only do I look forward to that, but I feel like I'm a part of it.
Hmm.
So I'm actually kind of a distant part of another practice, and it's kind of fun to see where that goes and how it all plays, because those interconnections are certainly there,
Yeah.
and they're not trivial, I don't believe.
Well,
Well, it's nice to feel like either something's working for me or to see something working for someone else and then be excited about it, or those are big important moments. So
Absolutely.
but we've talked about what we do. Why don't we perhaps see about what we have for the weeks ahead of us?
Okay, I'll reach into my bag of wonder here and see what I can come up with. The first Omen I chose in the Colin Murray system is called More, and More means the sea. It is really the end of one journey and the beginning of another. And this is not just a trivial journey, but a long journey. Um, so it's the sea, maternal instincts, and the road ahead or the path ahead, the great waters. So perhaps some big things on the horizon. The next poem I drew, I'm going to draw three of them, is Ruis. Ruis is the elder tree, and it really means in this system the end of the beginning and the beginning of the end of a shorter term cycle. So the start of another cycle. So here we've got a couple cycles starting, and they seem to be kind of synchronizing together. And then I just heard about this one today. This is and it's it's the heather and the mistletoe, and it really represents the all heal. The mistletoe is the all heal, and part of that all heal process is looking inside of ourselves and using that information that we find within ourselves to help ourselves heal. So kind of self-knowledge and self-healing. So some journeys in the works and some introspection as well. I think that's what's in store for the weeks ahead.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining us for this second episode. You can find us on the web and on Facebook, and all of the links are going to be down below. And Hopefully we'll have our links to our individual blogs as well if you would like to follow us and see what we're up to when we're not recording this podcast. And I think that's it.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up or subscribe for more videos in the future. You can also find us on Facebook or our website, triskelepodcast.weebly.com.